Hey, I got a good opening this morning. I found a great Juneteenth poem, video, audio thing.
Oh, very nice.
That I think we should start with.
Yes.
But and I don't even know automatically who did it, but it's beautiful. So, hey, JB, why don't we? I was thinking we might start out this morning. I got this beautiful read, and actually it's a video too, poem on Juneteenth, which is today.
Sure, I heard you.
It only goes about 3 minutes, you know. And I
great.
think I don't know whether I think something happened with Ted. Sean's going to call him later. He said he's going to call him around.
Ted didn't say anything about not coming on. He indicated that he was coming on, but Zaki can't make it.
No, I know Zaki. Zaki's on R&R this morning, our competitor. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but he's Zaki is quite. He's turned into quite the celebrity.
Oh well, this. I mean, history has put. Here is the thing. Remember that movie, The Four Feathers? Where the man from the desert helps out the British guy, and he says, "Why did you help me? Why did you help me? God placed you in my path."
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you both something that I saw that was stirring and amazing at the same time. There was a protester. There were dueling protests going on. There was one by the alt-right, and there was one being done by, I think, in association with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And one of the alt-right guys got kind of too far into the BLM area, and he got pushed down to the ground, and one of the BLM guys picked him up, threw him over his shoulder, and carried him out of harm's way.
Interesting.
I thought that was one of the more.
Yeah.
If that doesn't make you tear up a little bit, you're not human.
It's a Christian moment. Okay, let me get the tape started here, and let's start with.
Would you like me to introduce or not?
Wait till I get the tapes. Yes, I do, but I want to.
Well, because you always accuse me of being like a wrestling announcer, and
I know I tease you, but I think it's great what you do. Okay, so I mean, don't you want to have a straight man on the side, making your joke?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, whatever.
Whatever.
Okay,
that was
here.
quick.
Let me. Yeah. In other words, no, not really.
Yeah, give a shit.
All right, let's start this guy up, and then let's make sure we got this guy going. Let's start up YouTube.
Hey, Mikey.
Yes, sir.
Did you hear that Sam Pensock won the AG race?
Isn't that amazing?
I think so.
Because they had him losing
by 700 votes on election day, but he came back and he won by 150.
That's fantastic. Good.
I'm sure there'll be a recount.
That is good. That is good.
That's amazing.
I know Judy was really, really geeked up about him.
Yeah, I was too. I voted for him. I like him a lot.
But Judy, Judy also said she has got a bunch of recycled stuff for you.
Right, always.
Okay, why don't you open us up? We're ready to go. Why don't you open us up there?
Good morning out there in Zoom land and wherever you happen to be, whether you be on YouTube, whether you stumbled on us by mistake, whether you appreciate you coming into Enlightened Radio's production of Talking Socialism with your host and original dusty-footed philosopher, Mr. John Case, and his sidekick, who knows a lot more about socialism than I could ever dream of, Mr. JB Christensen, and I'm just the loudmouth guy who does announcements and real smarmy, shitty comments.
And
Good day.
You're ready to work for the government, right? Socialism.
I'm ready to get paid.
I'm ready to get paid. As soon as I'll give you the red, sir, as soon as I get paid.
Yes.
Anyway, okay, let's do a little bit of let me get the share shown on the screen, so in case people are see the tape. Free at last. There we go.
Yeah, it just came up 9 o'clock.
There we go.
Here we go.
General Granger brought the news to Galveston. The war is over. President Lincoln has decreed, the Emancipation Proclamation declares, all who live in bondage here shall from now until be free. After 300 years of forced labor, descendants of Africa picked up their souls, all that they owned, leaving shackles where they fell on the ground, headed for the nearest resting place. Some went no further than the shack out back, oft only a shed, hard ground for a bed, hard labor, no pay, but the will to survive. Though they couldn't call it their own, they still declared, "This is my home." Some went to the nearest place of the Lord, to some hollow place in the brush, or to a clearing in a grove, where folk gathered neath a still-standing tree and sang, "Thank you, Jesus, for delivering me." Some ran as far as they could go, into the surface of the man on the laboring land, working for a pittance in a little plot of space, much like they did as a slave. Some made a beeline for the nearest saloon, singing a song, picking a tune, toasting the union and lady luck, setting the flow, dancing the jig and the buck, patting themselves on their whip-scarred backs, carousing from night into day. Some went the way of the river, following the Rio Grande or swimming the upflowing Mississippi, hastening to get as far as they could, thrusting their futures into sanctuary and unknown friendless territory. Some kept running like a stone on a hill, never to grasp a firm place to rest. Some even went to the promised land. Wherever they went, alone or abreast, at the end of their journey they cried, "I've done my best." Every year in the Lone Star State and in towns from sea to sea, sons and daughters of the ones who were held celebrate the time when their forebears got the news. The war was over. All men were free. They will always remember. They will never forget Juneteenth, when their forebears could shout, "Free at last, hallelujah, I'm free."
All right, how about that?
Wow.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
I thought that was cool, man.
It's incredibly well done.
Yeah, beautifully produced. Yeah,
Yeah, that lady, that Sojourner is very famous.
Yes.
The lady that
read it.
narrated it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know whether she wrote it or not, but she may have.
Well, I've seen some of her clips on Free Speech TV.
Right. Oh, okay.
Some of her stuff. Tom Hartman's run some of her stuff before.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I thought this was a beautiful testimony. You know, so.
Yeah.
Well, okay. On the another thing to get started here with, get you guys talking about. Okay, we've had the primary election, and we've been on the national front. I think I posted this yesterday on Facebook that I had a moment of sheer optimism that grabbed.
How could that possibly happen?
Well, I started
JB, you're not supposed to let him become optimistic. That's crazy.
I rethought the Jim Mattis, what do you call it, Colin Powell, and the Army Chief of Staff,
Right.
backstepping and apologizing, and a few other incidents. And I said, okay,
The Assistant Secretary of State resigning, African American woman.
That was key. That was key.
Yeah, she just resigned.
But I also want to focus on the military because, in my view, if that's the biggest immediate threat that we have or had, is Trump canceling or corrupting the election in some way, especially using riots and police and the military to do so. And I was very happy when the generals stepped away from that. But now I'm thinking that maybe they were sending a stronger message that maybe you need to remove this guy, because when the military comes out and defies the president of the United States, you're already crossing a pretty serious line. It seems to me, at least in historical protocols, it seems to me. And
And two very big.
maybe that's what they were saying. Hey, get rid of this guy now, or he will threaten the election. And
Well, I mean, I think he's going to.
And plus, but if he doesn't have the military behind him, ultimately the damage that he can cause is weird. But here's the problem: suppose he doesn't remove, and the military must remove him. Okay.
Then they have to.
Well, they have to, but then in every country, this question is always very finely written in the constitutions of their country. But then, when the moment comes, the outcome is not always identical. So
no, I know.
But I took great hope from those top generals, thinking more carefully about. They crossed a big line when they did that, and I think that bodes well. That Trump will not have the reason. Now, whether we can, that's another reason why the protests. Man, if all possible, they should surge and continue all the way to November. And beyond, if necessary.
Force his resignation.
Yes, absolutely. And just so that everybody knows, oh, by the way, we don't give a shit if you cancel the mail ballot. We're going to turn out in the millions. We're going to lift the voting place right off the ground, okay? Turn it into a jail. We'll put you in, somebody. I mean, you get that kind of move. I mean, that's what happened, and ultimately ended in the 60s and 70s with Nixon's resignation. I mean, there was a lot of different streams of opposition that came together.
Well, I mean, all they do is continue to show their hand and piss people off. As long as they continue to do that, they're even pissing people off that used to support them.
Yeah, I know.
Because if you look at, there's no definitive proof that that mail-in voting favors either party. There's no in some states it favors Republicans.
It favors voting. That's all it favors.
But that's what we want,
Right.
We want it. I personally think you ought to be able to vote online if you got a secure token or something.
And I think some states do.
Yeah.
I think Washington State you can vote.
I think Washington State is moving to that percentage-wise, a little bit at a time. Yeah, I think some of their counties are already online for voting. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but look, these guys don't have a vested interest in presenting their agenda as it being digestible to the larger percentage of our population. We all know they're full of shit. We all know that. We all look at the tax cut that they just it screwed us, and now you have this munchkin hiding these dollars that were supposed to go to small businesses.
Yeah.
Well, they went to it's like
Munchkin's
Don Corleone.
gotta go.
That was like Don Corleone's small businesses.
Yeah.
I mean,
Munchkin's horrible. He's the worst.
I feel as if I don't really need to tell you exactly where the money is going. I think that maybe that we have already decided. I'm sorry.
I make up my mind about which companies should go bankrupt, and I go in and take every last dime of their money to make sure that they are bankrupt.
Well, President Trump and I had a meeting, and my ass hurts. Oh, ow, ow.
But that Donald likes to pay for sex, so.
Well, no, he likes to pay to have somebody hit him with a magazine or something.
I thought that what's her name? Who was the one in the beginning? I thought she said that when she was asked about what kind of sex that took place, she said, "Oh, it's pretty plain vanilla."
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, I think she said it was. Stormy Daniels said it was kind of. She was glad when it was over.
Well, I think most whores are. I mean, come on.
Oh, stop. Wow.
Well, and the more you can, I mean, their pimp is certainly, he wants it to be, if it's $50 or $100, he wants it, hey, how about, what's the most I can make in an hour kind of thing,
Well, there is no pimp in this situation.
Avenatti.
Well, that was later on down the road, and then
this is a sign that we need more women on the show.
He presented to be almost as full of shit as the orange shit stain.
Hey, I have a confession to make, Mike. I sent an email to your wife inviting her to be on the program next week to begin the testosterone.
Say it again, John.
We're going to try
You were saying?
Yeah, we're gonna try to bring down the
yes.
testosterone level.
Oh,
You know,
I
so I
invited
was.
Hannah.
Hannah, we got to get more women on here. We definitely do.
That's right.
Well, I think you guys are absolutely right, and that's wonderful.
So
if she
I mean,
wants to
Patience
come
is
on,
she
I'm
can always
certain
she always has a strong view on what's going on. You know, I know. You know, so,
no.
yeah, you know.
My wife have a strong view.
Well, and Patience is good on the radio because she'll take a strong position, and you know, I may or may not agree with it, but I mean, the fact that she stakes out a, you know, I mean, that's actually takes a pistol out into the yard. Says, "You want to do something with me?" Okay,
phrase.
Come on.
My favorite phrase lately from my wife is, "Would you just shut the fuck up and let me talk?"
Man.
Yeah,
I just
man.
gotta go.
You know, this life in
Okay.
sheltering, these marriages in sheltering, where you agreed to be with each other for life, but not necessarily every minute of every day when you took the vows, right? And
Well,
but now you find out,
yeah.
do you really love me? Do you really love me?
It's reminiscent of a bit I used to do.
Yeah.
I used to do this bit. I was working on it. It never really came to fruition, but some of it I found really amusing. Is they used to tell you, remember sometimes those late night commercials that come on and go, "Hey, be your own boss, work from home, be your own boss, work from home." And it's not necessarily that you're your own boss. Say you're working from home for your wife. All of a sudden, it's no longer really, you know, because I saw the org chart for our company and I am like below the cats. Okay.
Yeah, of course you are.
So, you know, we were having a staff meeting in the kitchen the other day. And
right. Yeah, the cats.
Every once in a while, we'll take a junket out to the backyard. That's our,
well,
you know,
my cats have
it's not the same. It's not, you know, it isn't all you think it's it's not, it's a nightmare. It's and listen, I'm just saying, I've told her on a number of occasions, if you want me to do something, keep your hands to yourself. Okay. This is a work environment.
You mean, oh, really? Okay, so
yeah, I'm just
sexual
saying,
harassment on the job.
Look, I appreciate that, but I'm focused on what you asked me to do.
See, you're reaching into an area where obviously no laws can actually be written other than the most extreme ones. I mean, who's going to write the rules of marriages? I mean, come on.
What's the big question of the day is, are we going to make it to November?
Yeah, I agree. That is the big question.
Yeah, that you know what, man, that haunts me every day and night.
I mean,
JB.
You never know what's going to happen. I mean, it's just a total toss-up. You know, anything could happen. Anything.
Is he going to start a war?
Yeah, exactly.
If he can,
magically make up some bullshit.
I think he's trying to start one inside the country with these militias. I mean, because they're going to end up shooting more. They killed. They shot somebody the other day. A protester.
Well, yeah, there was a protester. They were on that statue.
Yeah.
And they were fighting with each other, and the one alt-right guy ran away, shot a taser, and then all of a sudden, gunfire came from his direction. He was shooting at the protesters, and I'm not sure if he killed one of them, but I know he shot one of them.
He shot one of them, yeah. Well,
okay. How about the guy at Wendy's falling asleep in the drive-thru and then he ends up dead?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that, and now you have the state's attorney, I think it is. I'm not sure who, but coming out and saying, look, we have one cop is going to testify, and then he turns around and says, no, I'm not testifying against, you know, he says, I'm just going to tell you, because he comes on MSNBC with his lawyer and says it was a very unfortunate situation. You know, but yeah, unfortunate, dude, while he was dying, you were standing on his goddamn shoulders. That's pretty fucking unfortunate.
He kicked him, didn't he?
No, the guy who shot him kicked him.
Oh, the guy who shot him kicked him.
And then he also said, I got him.
Yeah.
Like the guy was a fucking animal or something.
Yeah, like it was open season.
Yeah.
It was like it was deer season.
These are human beings with children.
I'm not real optimistic
all
on
the interviews that he's done prior to this are starting to come out, and he was very thoughtful person.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, because he had already had some run-ins.
Right, but he was spot on. Everything
and he was saying, look, stop treating us like Yeah, stop treating us like animals. You know, we
Yeah.
have lives.
I'm
You
not
know,
that optimistic about the police reform agenda.
Well, and you can't
You
be
know,
optimistic about a suggestion. That's all
no,
that
no,
stupid
no.
ass thing was that he signed.
Well, for example, I heard a very
Look at my cat anus mouth. Look at it.
anus mouth. Oh God, I heard a really good report the other day on the activities around the in Chicago and Detroit and other places where you know, for example, the National Alliance Against, I think, Racist and Political Repression, that was a thing founded by Angela Davis and friends a long time ago, which went dormant, just reopened, and they, you know, signed up 200,000 members.
Mm.
So
I
you're
gotta tell you,
seeing
that Chicago mayor is
that's
doing one hell
something
of a job.
that's something else. And but nonetheless, I use the example of South Africa, you know, and how the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions were the ultimate remedy, well, ultimate way in which the nation confronted, but they were only able to do so after the anti-apartheid forces won power, and they could tell the army forces, the security forces, either you testify what happened and tell the truth, or you will go on trial. Okay. And the courts are now run by the African National Congress. So what is your choice? Well, I'll testify at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was the answer, of course. And, you know, but you can't get there. It's very tough to get there until you have a really pretty strong baseball bat in your hand, okay, to make it happen. And it's very difficult to sort of do that in our, I'm not too optimistic about that happening in the short term. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's going to be a long struggle because you just had the chief of police from PG County resign, and you know there have been a bunch of notes and a study that have been going on for a really long time, an investigation that brought up, you know, racial bias and sexual bias on a number of occasions that he did not look into. Okay, so
Yeah.
he's resigned. This is Prince George, and you had one of the former beat officers who had retired say something that affected me. He said, "Look, if we cannot handle racism in our ranks, how the hell are we going to handle it in the community?"
Well, right, obviously. So,
You know, and that I felt like that was
yeah.
a really, I mean, he was a retired African American beat cop who was part of another organization. I'm blanking on its name. I apologize, but really smart, insightful guy, and you know, he talked about his issues when he was coming up through the ranks as an African American police officer, and how some of the majority white officers treated him. You know, that's not and a lot of times those some of those poor people have to keep their mouth shut because they want to keep their job.
Well,
You
of
know,
course,
which
yeah,
sucks.
absolutely. No, well,
Which
I
is,
mean, yeah, come on, you know, I mean, it's like when you get hired onto you know, any company, probably. I mean, there's some formal expectation of loyalty.
We should be down in D.C. watching the Confederate generals be carted out, you know, shipped out.
Yeah, I'm
And
glad
Pelosi, she has raised hell down there.
I know.
She's getting all the portraits, everything.
yeah,
She's tough, man. She's
Anything
tough.
that has that fingerprint on it is gone.
good for her.
Gone.
Well, she's been, you know, like, it's funny how she picks the issues where she thinks she can make progress, right? You know, you see a vulnerability on the other side, you push right there, right? Okay, just because you know,
I love that about her, man.
you got a nose for tactics, right? You know.
Yeah, and she needles him all the way. Needles him.
Yeah. She's really got under his skin, you know. I mean,
And I pray for the president. I do.
She should
every
send
night.
all those
good Catholic.
statues and paintings to Mar-a-Lago.
I don't hate him at all. I pray for him every night.
Dump him on the front lawn.
I don't hold hate in my heart. I pray for the president and his family every night.
Yes, that's right. She's great. I mean, that part, you know.
But he doesn't listen. He does not listen.
He doesn't
Well, he's
have to listen.
He's in a box now, so we're going to see. We're going to.
Narcissist who has had TIAs. It's pretty obvious when you have to take your left hand and push your right hand up in the air to drink a glass of water. Something's wrong.
Yeah. So what is that exactly? Is that motor?
I can't remember now because I had 3 of them, and that's combined. That's what the
so maybe he had a stroke.
Was the stroke? Yeah, it's a stroke.
Yeah, maybe he had one.
I think he did. Because I talked to my friend Joe, and Joe had massive. Joe had about 14 TIAs, all in 6, and it's paralyzed him.
Wow.
He's just now, I think, getting back the ability to read.
Huh.
It took me a while.
You talking about Joe Biden?
No, Joe Dealey, a friend of mine. Would you
don't say Joe Biden, John? Come on.
Was that supposed to be funny?
That's not even funny.
Was that supposed to be funny? Was that?
I don't know.
It's not funny, John.
Jesus Christ! Shut the fuck up, John. Anyway.
Jeez.
See, everybody else on the show comes on, and they're all like, because it's John's show, they're all like afraid. And I just tell John, shut the fuck up.
Tell him to fuck off. I love it. I love it.
Anyway,
I don't care. I don't give a shit.
I apologize.
So there's nobody in the waiting room, John?
Not right now, no.
Maybe they're all putting us on bypass today.
I don't know. We have 20 listeners on YouTube, though.
Oh, that's cool.
I can't tell how many on the radio right now because
let's have a shout out to our listeners.
Yeah, hey there, buddy. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
And please join us if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I put the invite on.
To further my point, it takes someone who has gone through that to recognize it.
Right.
I do believe that. And Joe and I both were talking on it was his birthday. I was calling to sing him happy birthday, and he was like, "Hey man, that dude's had a couple of we were both like, yeah, I can see it, you know. It's not just the arm thing, it's the not being able to pronounce Ulysses S. Grant.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I think he's dyslexic. He acts
God bless the United.
Yeah, see, I think he's dyslexic.
What? You had to think about the oranges.
When he reads, it's like I have a nephew that's got severe dyslexia, and
I have partial dyslexia.
And he, when he tries to read, it sounds a little like Trump.
I think you've made a complete recovery, Mike. I really do.
Well, JB, you would think so, but every once in a while, if I push it over the course of 2 or 3 days,
like
if I do a whole lot of physical activity and I get exhausted, I'll be hit with a tremor. I can guarantee it.
Right.
You know, and the tremor comes. I know the tremor's coming when my eye starts to spasm. Because my eye starts to spasm, then my shoulder starts to spasm, and then I can't talk for the next 5 minutes. Huh. I mean, I can't form. I'm stuttering.
Right. Yeah.
The next 5 to sometimes. I think the longest it's gone is about 20 minutes.
That's pretty long.
Well, I haven't heard it on the show here yet. I mean, maybe I'm not paying close enough attention, but
occasionally, you know, if I think about it too much.
The economic reports coming out, let's just get into that for a second, are not good.
No.
The stock market has started to take into account the possibility of the second wave, and of course the rising number of infections is.
I say again, continuation of the first wave, not a second.
Or continue, right? And I think Dr. Fauci has said the same thing. And the people I listen to most are Johns Hopkins. Excuse me. Hey, hold on, Mike. Don't talk over me. I forgot what I was going to say. Well, you blew me
I
away.
just screwed up my good
You
friend
know-
John Case's point. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It was a worthless point. It's out there in the ocean right behind me right now.
I'm completely sorry. This is Dr. Fauci. I'm sorry. I did not mean to.
Okay.
That's a good
Now
Fauci
Fauci brought it all back. Fauci brought it all back. Okay, yeah.
Good,
So we have the depression continues.
Mhm.
And this is, I mean, folks, wait till you see the list of bankruptcies coming this week. Okay. It's going to be stupendous. And when you hit
Big
July
company.
1st, if there is not a major aid to state economies, it's like Patsy Nolan told us on the other show. I mean, I'm wondering whether we're going to be able to pay the judges after our $300,000 windfall from the liquor tax goes away. Right? I mean, you remember when she said that, basically?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I don't know. I wasn't listening to her.
well, I was, and but I just take that as a sign that the county commission, the city councils, of all the different counties, right?
Well, and then you're looking at a real meltdown in terms of services. You're looking at if you do not do something very soon, you're looking at whether these cops want to be or not. A lot of them are going to get laid off. A lot of the EMTs, they're not going to have the money to pay these people.
Well, that's true, because the fees coming in are going to be cut. So
Ridiculous.
So I don't know. We're sitting here talking about it, but what the hell? I mean, you start to ask yourself, well, what are we going to do? I mean, you're talking about 20% of the population, maybe more.
Can you go back in
not
time?
working.
Can you go back in time and run the tape from one of the third or fourth episode of End of the Road? What did I say?
Jesus.
What did I tell you?
I don't know.
You agreed with me. You completely agreed with me.
I might have been
7 to 10 trillion dollars.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
7 to 10 trillion dollars it's going to take to get us the hell out. Are we spending it? No, we're not.
I'm a little short on the 7 million billion trillion. Can I get back? Can I write you a check?
Listen. No.
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, we are in free fall, guys. We're in free fall.
Some of the money will be going to some corporations that are very valuable to the president.
So, I mean, I'm beginning to think that we ought to transform the or just add another layer onto the Black Lives Matter protests and the whole upsurge that's going on here, and just say resign.
Get out.
Get out.
You're in the way.
I mean, all of you guys, get the hell out, okay? Yeah. And man, now we put people in the streets until it happens.
And we don't want bullshit. We want people in there that can run the country.
Now, I'm sorry, but this patriotic effort, like a war, may cost some lives, because you cannot do this. You cannot get in the way of a broken machine that's running down the road killing you by staying in your house. You can't. Unfortunately, you cannot. I mean, now it's just and the people hitting the streets over this whole thing, end of the road on racial killings, right? They got out. It didn't matter. At a certain point, it does not matter. And if you had got no money and no food, it does not matter.
There is speaking of which, John, I should have sent this to you. On MSNBC, one of the shows aired a broadcast of there's a group of women that have all lost their children, in African-American women, in police acts of violence. Among the, I believe, 8 women, only 1 cop was prosecuted.
Right.
And said all the other cops were let off. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, a disabled African-American man was sitting in the street. He would not put down his little truck, but he put his hands in the air. He was sitting down, and his social worker was sitting right next to him. The cops killed him. And today the cop was acquitted. Or yesterday.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Where did that take place?
I'm not certain. I'd have to go back, and I should have done better research. I apologize for not being prepared. I'm sorry. But
well,
but
we'll have to cut your pay for that.
It's still the same shit. It's still the same. When you talk about the cops, you have to talk about the prosecutors too. You have to talk about people in the administration of whatever county, state you're talking about.
Right.
I mean,
time for a general strike.
Look at the reversal on Wayne Jones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's taken 5 years.
It's a big pain in the ass, and that's too long for justice for his family.
Well, that's what I mean. I think you got to start talking around the country about shutting it all down. Stop this.
Justice delayed is justice denied.
I mean, it's so many on so many fronts, right? I mean, you got dysfunction. The thing is falling through the hole in the.
Yeah, but finally, these are things we've known about for decades, and it's finally all coming to a head.
So we got to put it back together, and it's funny.
We've always known.
I'm missing Bernie's campaign at the moment.
Here's my dad driving down the road in his truck. Impression of my dad. Son, this is a beer.
While he's driving.
Be careful. The enemy is out there, and they are cunning. Now drink your beer. All right, Pop.
How to evade the police.
The first thing he did when he retired.
Break the law. Yeah, right. I'm going to break a little law here.
Well, I think he was very pleased to be gone when he was. It was just a little bit too much violence for his taste.
So on the pandemic issue, it seems to be looks like Florida and Texas now are getting the hospitals filled, and
Oklahoma.
That's the tipping point.
Yeah, and Oklahoma
being 2 weeks.
Right.
Right where Orange McShitgibbon is going tomorrow.
Are you going to watch that? I mean, don't you think it's going to be a spectacle?
Bono, I'm 12, 16 years old. I come down here and watch a man talk. And there's the man. Okay.
He has not mentioned COVID for weeks now.
Where was Obama during that 9/11? That's what I want to know. What happened to Obama? Where was he?
Be careful. I think he's got something planned besides the speech.
I do too. That's what I mean. I'm thinking about watching it. I haven't watched him in ages, but I'm thinking about watching tomorrow.
I wouldn't be surprised if.
I tell you what, I'll watch.
He wants a confrontation. He wants it big time. That's his only hope now. Is conflagration. Really, I don't think he has. Yeah.
Mass chaos, but he is in no position to solve anything. He can't solve anything.
And he can't quite get to martial law because the military apparently is not digging what he's doing. It's a problem.
3.5 years.
Taking care of the problem of the Smurfs. The Smurfs are a terrorist organization. I have said that for years.
So did Hitler.
Maybe he'll have John Bolton abducted and taken to the convention center, and then
now there's an example of two creeps flaying each other, but I welcome any divide amongst those fools.
Just have Bolton's mustache show up. Just
right. He looks like he'd be one of the, if you met him, you'd be tempted to say, hey, that's quite a cookie duster you got there.
Oh
man, I think I see your lunch from Tuesday in there. What's going on?
Jeez.
Reaches up and pulls out a sandwich out of his
bushy boo boo. I
love the Colbert interview that I think it was Dana Carvey was playing Bolton, and each time they cut back to Bolton, the mustache just kept getting bigger and bigger.
So a mustache, I'm told, I'm informed. I don't have it on absolute authority, but that it's good. For cunnilingus, but not so good for regular kissing.
Is there? JP, how did we get to cunnilingus? How the fuck did we? We went from labor and money and to come. What the? I am really, really afraid there's something wrong with our host. I really am.
That's another
You know
reason
what?
why we
Hey,
need
John,
more
cut his
women.
mic. Cut his mic. Just mute yourself for the rest of the fucking show, John. Mute yourself.
We need more women on the show.
Jesus.
I don't know that they would object to the.
Yeah, that would have kept you from saying that.
Well, I probably would have. Yeah.
You wouldn't have said that if my wife was on you. My wife would have just hit mute or cut. She would have just said bye.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, you probably do.
I'd say Mikey probably knows.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit aware of that. It's just,
once again,
cut
I
yourself
apologize.
off today. You're not on your game.
So
I apologize
to
again.
change the subject, we have a governor's race that has a third-party challenger, local delegate, Marshall Wilson. And he's doing a Facebook campaign so far, but I answered one of his posts and congratulated him on the effort to get Jim Justice out of office. And he just answered me today or last night. He wants me to help him get petitions, get signatures so that he can get on the ballot. And I what do you guys think about that? I'm all in.
I'll tell you what, he ain't going to
Yeah, he might take votes.
Children.
He might take the votes away from Justice.
Exactly. And so I think we should help him get the signatures. What do you think?
Well, I'm.
Is he? What is his? What is he? Where does he?
He's a libertarian.
Libertarian. He's like an Elliot Simon.
No thanks.
Ex-military.
Or who's the guy from Shepherdstown? Eberhard.
Nope. No thanks.
Same thing.
Well, does libertarian equal racist?
No, not always. It does in Rand Paul.
Libertarian equals fantasy land.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it really is based on just a complete fiction. That's the problem. I mean,
But-
hey, if you want to live in the old West, I'm sorry, pal. That's a vortex past. I mean, I don't think if you'd actually been on the frontier, you'd have dug it all that much. Okay, but I mean, survival was a tough proposition. So, but nonetheless, they have an ideology that says, "Oh, wow, it all ought to be like it was with Wyatt Earp or some shit," or
laissez-faire, right?
Listen, I'm going to drive. I don't believe in these lights. I don't believe in them. I don't believe in these four-way stops. I don't believe in your rules with my seatbelt. I don't believe in your rules with my not drinking.
Right.
I'm going to drink. I'm going to ride a motorcycle down the street through these screw it. And you know what? Another thing too, I'm not even riding on your roads. I'm going to drive right through your fucking yard. How about that?
On your way to your dinner party tonight, I plan on killing 5 people.
So if your kids are in the way, you happen to have a swimming pool in my way, I'm going to drive right through it.
That road you came on here, I just bought it.
Without a helmet.
Yeah. Who needs a post office? I didn't get an email today. And that fire department, my house is not going to burn down.
I guess John and I's response to your request, JB, is no.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know. You can get him on.
I'm going to try to get some signatures. I
would be tempted to.
I think it'll help. It'll help.
Let me know when he's on. Let John know so John can mute me the entire time.
Oh no, we'll just.
I think the guy's intelligent.
If he's a rational guy, I'm happy to have a.
I think he's a good guy. He's a gentleman.
I enjoyed debating Elliot on the radio for a year until he just made the same argument over and over and over and over and over again. That was idiotic and stupid, and he claimed to be an economist, but he was not.
Well, you know what? Look, all I'm saying is I am both. You got to stay out of my lane. I'm idiotic and stupid, so I'm both of those things.
There's a problem.
Stay out of my lane.
You may be idiotic, but you're not stupid, Mike.
That's all I'm saying.
So, but no one has been able yet to paint a picture of economic recovery from COVID that works.
Well, I don't think you can continue.
You don't know yet. Nobody knows yet.
I don't think you can continue to paint the picture, JB and John, when you don't know when this thing's going to be over with. When you don't know, COVID numbers keep going up. Now, New York is, and I love the fact that they play this blame game with, we're not New York City. And the people in Arkansas and Alabama, wait, no, New York's, no shit, you're not, no. Because they're flattening the curve, but I'll tell you what, they will use those statistics to continue to open these businesses, and you're going to continue to have super spreader events. You're just going to have them, man. You just had one at Greenbrier Baptist Church. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It was a super spreader event. It was like 19 people.
Yeah. I thought there was 22 or something.
Well, now there's more. Now there's because those people go home and spread it to their family members. Right. So that's how this shit works. I don't understand what people get into the minutia of it, and they're like, oh well, I don't want to wear a mask.
But taking apart just the personalities, okay, like the Trumps and all this, okay, but there is a real issue here where you're having a social problem that's coming up and wrecking your economic system. And your economic system is what is the means of life, pal. I mean, it is the means of life for 300 million people.
Bucko.
And so, I mean, that collision is a problem. It's a problem with actually how much socialism you don't have. Because I mean, it's hard to tell a private company that, oh, you should give up being profitable and take every bit of dime you have to help fix this social problem, okay? And which might be a normal response for an ordinary human being or a moral human being, but for an organization like that, it's like I should take a sword and kill myself because they will die doing that, okay?
Well,
and so you obviously only a government. That's what governments are for, security.
You and I talked about this too, John. You and I talked about, and JB's been in on this conversation for a long time too, is redefining what a corporation is and how it calculates its profits.
Okay, but it's still going to have to be profitable. Okay,
I mean, I understand that, John. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be profitable. That's not my point. My point is everything cannot be done for the next quarter.
Well,
everything
that's true.
Cannot be done aiming at profitability in the next quarter.
So you could do that. You could change the. I mean, you talked about before the B type corporations, for example. Other things. But I mean, you have to have an economic infrastructure that makes that possible. See, for example, the buying and selling property, the markets, what part is going to be market driven and what part is not, because the market operation is going to lead to greater intensification all the time. All right, that's just the way growth happens. All right, and scale is a big deal. I mean, you can now serve the entire world. So with widgets, and you got to produce 6 billion widgets. Well, if you can, who needs the second widget factory at that point, right? So my point is that you got these powerful forces that you need to have government intervention on, but you can't have enough to, it won't work right now because we don't have any, we have very little. And so you can't tell Facebook, for example, why don't you bear the burden of censorship for the country? You can't tell them. I mean, maybe you could try to make it, but they'll fuck it up if you tell them to do it. And make it. They will.
Yeah, they get JV's mask.
They will.
Cool.
They will. Oh, I like that. You're
cool mask, dude.
They say that scoundrels. They say that scoundrels wrap themselves in the flag too.
Well, that's.
So they're going to pass out masks at the rally, but you don't have to wear them. What I mean, how ridiculous!
Why not?
The mayor wants them to cancel it because he's fearing
all of the Tulsa Republicans and Democrats, all alike, mostly Republicans, want him to stop. Just no, don't do it.
Right. So why isn't,
or do it outside and have social distancing?
So why isn't MSNBC on the ground there interviewing those people? And
Oh, they are. They
were.
were. There's people there in line right now, JB. There's like I was doing. There's a 68-year-old woman. Mind you, I'm coming here to see the president speak because I won't.
I mean, they're all going to get it.
I'm like, wow, 68.
They're all going to get it.
Take a deep breath.
Can you imagine? I mean, why would you do that? It's almost like walking to your death.
None of them were wearing masks. No one in line that's in line to see the function tomorrow were wearing masks. None of them.
So a bunch of them are going to get it on their way in.
I am worried about this COVID as much as I am worried about the common flu.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
what one
so
woman said. So,
so we're headed to hell. And my optimism has faded as the program has gone on here.
we started off optimistic, and now we want to blow shit up.
I mean, the one thing the military can't do, the U.S. military, has been proven, is they cannot govern countries.
No.
I mean, we're worse than the British ever were, okay,
Right.
at it. We're just not good at it. I mean, the military goes in, stomps down whoever they want to stomp down.
Hey,
but afterwards,
did a good job.
well, Eisenhower, no, but Eisenhower was against occupations, actually.
Right.
You know? Yeah, he was one of the guys that he was not in favor of.
He was the last good Republican president.
I know. Well, he did not hate Roosevelt's New Deal.
I know. He was a realist.
Well, he also warned everyone about the military-industrial complex too.
But when they got rid of him, man, they returned to their Herbert Hoover, Calvin Coolidge roots there, and got worse. You know, Reagan, and my God, you know, so
Reagan.
Anyway, but I'm concerned that I'm wondering how we're gonna even get. Let's take the optimistic road and assume Biden wins. Okay, Biden wins, and either we win the Senate or we don't win the Senate. Now, if we don't win the Senate, not much is going to happen.
I think we either win the Senate or we even things up. We get real close.
I mean, we'll get rid of the worst abuses. I mean, if Biden's there and not Trump, I mean, I think that'll be
make Romney's vote very valuable in the future.
Yeah. It might, if we could get a coalition of some kind that could try to put this back together, put people back to work, and put money in their pocket at least.
I mean, they're in trouble in Nevada. They're in trouble in Colorado. Cory Gardner's in trouble. Joni Ernst is in trouble. McSally's in trouble. Susan Collins is in trouble. These are all numbers, and frighteningly, Lindsey Graham has a competitive race for the first time in his adult life as a politician.
It would be nice to see them all go down. Can you imagine the headlines? Mitchell, Lindsey Graham, who's another creep? That Tom Cotton, all defeated.
Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis is losing. I mean, he's behind.
Well, that's good. I want him
behind by 6 points. So.
But I want him. But see, I got a fire in me now. I want him punished. I'm a left-wing authoritarian. I want him sent to a gulag.
Yes,
I do.
And by gulag, we just mean that. Look, all we'd like you to do is come in and sit in this little comfortable chair for a while, and have guys like 3 times bigger than me come in and chat with you for a little bit. Just, hey, how you doing?
Right, you're right. Yeah.
Hey, Senator McConnell, how you doing? Why don't you have a seat? Listen.
Right. Anytime, by the way.
Hey, how you doing? Sit down.
By the way, this little pill. Anytime you get a headache, take this little pill here.
Hey, some of the judges that you guys pass through, listen, all I'm saying is quack.
Yeah, right. I know you can imagine all kinds of movies that we can make about the prison life of ex-Trumpers. Starring Sylvester Stallone. No blood left. Had first blood, last blood, no blood. There'll be no blood anymore.
Put Arnold in there. It'll totally be incoherent.
Arnold's been okay. But Arnold's been okay recently, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, he's been going.
Yeah, he's doing better. I mean,
he was after Trump all the time.
Yeah, And so,
Well, this is, guys, I just got the word that I have to go.
well, why don't you go?
I thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we're going to wait on here for Sean's going to, I think Sean's come. I'm going to
Well,
head
tell
ahead and talk to
Sean I
Sean.
said hello, and I'm sorry I couldn't see him.
Okay. Cause and I'll talk to
Bye, guys.
JB. Okay, man. Take care. You know, don't kill yourself. There you go. Hi. Well, so, Mike has, been called to duty. I bet it's the neighbor's dog.
Hey, you know, Solar Holler's back in business, and they've got a union contract with IBEW.
Dan Conant's operation.
Yeah.
So how many employees does he have? 5?
Oh,
2?
probably a dozen or so.
Really? He's got that many, huh?
I would imagine.
That's cool.
We'll see. I mean, I want to see the contract. How does the public see a contract? Is that available?
If it's with the AFL-CIO, then within, I don't know anymore, but it might be faster now because things are higher tech now than it used to be. It used to be able to take a year. You could get a copy of it or a reproduction.
Yeah, well, the ink's not even dry on it yet, so.
Yeah. Well, you know, it'll be.
He'll get national attention with that because
all you need in a labor agreement is a grievance procedure and a recognition.
Right.
You know, you can have a union with just those two things. We used to organize. We had a lot of. I must have had at least 3 campaigns that we won. But we ended up in a complete showdown, stalemate with the company, and we didn't have enough of a majority to strike. So, you know, I said, hey, we're going to sign a contract with recognition and a grievance procedure, and that's it. And unfortunately, that leaves the door wide open for us to engage in all kinds of protected activity, by the way, my friend, Mr. Manager. But okay, we'll live with that. Okay, no, we won't put any raise in there, won't put nothing in there, but we're going to be pressing you for money.
Right.
From now until we sign a new contract. Okay. But you know, that's okay. You got at least some protection, and you have the ability to, you know, expose or try to protect your leadership, especially that because if not, they'll just decapitate them. Okay.
You think IBEW will pick up the benefits? You know, the health care and all that?
They don't pay for the benefits. The company has to pay for the benefits.
Right, but I mean, it's usually administered through IBEW, right?
Yeah, if you can afford the premiums, you know, it's like
Right.
anything else, right? You know, they,
Right.
I mean, it depends on how much, whether they're, you know, right now, I mean, they could probably, it's going to be hard for a union pension plan to not take advantage, especially in small outfits where you're, depending on what you're paying people. Small outfits that don't have a ton of reserves, right? It's a little touchy. They'll probably go through the Affordable Care Act. I mean, right, to get the coverage and maybe help out, you know, pick the right one, or, you know, help subsidize a part of it or something like that they can. I know there's a lot of different combos there, but but at regular like electricians that are covered, you know, through the union, right? I mean, that and through contracting, that's a completely different setup than
that's
what
I'm
happened in a
trying
small
to figure
firm.
out if it's a standard contract or if it's a sweetheart deal, you know.
No, it's going to be customized just for a small workforce that wants to be involved in management decisions. That's probably what inspired it. Okay, and then I think Dan's a progressive, liberal, if not left-wing guy, actually. And he probably favors having more collective relations with his employees.
Yeah, but
I mean, you run into some bosses like that. I mean, when I did that union strikes class, I was talking about a place we struck out in Compton, California. You know, but actually, the boss was not a bad guy, and he was playing a kind of complicated game with the employees because half of whom were Mexican and half were black. And the black workers were in the machine shop, and the Mexican workers were mostly on the production line. It's a big wire and cable shop for undersea cables. And but he was a European social democrat. He favored unions. He didn't object when the union organized there. Didn't fight it at all. All right.
Yeah.
He thought it was a gas to sit down and bargain with the employees. He had a great time doing it. Okay. Now he also was like to be cute and play off the Mexicans versus the blacks, and that blew up on him at some point. Okay, but still, you know, you run in occasionally to these managers. Usually they have to be high up, part owners, stock owners, former CEO, whatever. They got to be somebody that can do their own thing. But they sometimes you'll get a utopian socialist company, like the guy that wrote the original Jungle Book. Remember back in the day.
I should remember that, but I
can't remember
forget.
his name. You know, about the meatpacking industry and a number of other things. Upton Sinclair.
There you go.
Well, you know, he was a pro-union guy too. He contributed money to a bunch of unions, but what happened when people tried to organize his shop?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't happy about that. I've been so generous. How could you both? You know, one man's generosity doesn't quite see that way sometimes to the other. You know. So anyway, it's bad news. So you think? I think so. We could have any chance in Berkeley County of the Democrats winning? I don't know what's going to happen here in Jefferson County.
I think there's a big chance in Berkeley because of the, you know, just the chaos, you know, the chaos surrounding the pandemic and the way it's been handled nationally and statewide. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Democrats to pick up seats, especially in the House of Delegates, but also in the Senate. I think Sheriff Pete has a great chance of beating Patricia. And that'll go a long way to help us out here.
It'll be close.
Other races, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people there running for the first time, and there's a lot of new faces. So anything could happen as long as they can get out the vote. That's the big thing, is to get out the vote and try to encourage absentee ballots. You know, mail-in ballots, I think, is important. Because there's people like us, we're not going to ignore this thing. We're not going to ignore the pandemic.
No, I mean, I'm although I was the only guy at the voting station last 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, whatever.
Yeah, but everybody was wearing masks, right?
Yeah, but I was the only voter.
Yeah, well, they had a low turnout. What was Jefferson? I think Berkeley was 24%.
It was 20 something. I forget. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's
Sammy posted
typical.
it. Sammy posted it. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's typical for a primary. But you go to other counties, they were up in the 50s.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's interesting.
It is. I mean,
here I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You know, you got. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, in they're facing in the county, they're facing such a disaster that it's not. I don't think anybody's got their mind around it. We had Patsy on the show a couple of weeks ago, and it's clearly. Oh, here comes Sean. Good morning, Sean. You had a busy morning. It must be, and it's only 7 a.m.
Yes, it is. I haven't even had breakfast, John. I'm sacrificing to be here.
Oh my God! I'm so glad. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining, and we've had a raucous discussion here for most of the time, the past 45 minutes. Anyway, and Mike had to take off because his wife told him apparently he has things at 10 a.m. on his schedule of to-dos that must be accomplished. So
I think Ted's on now, right? Is he coming on?
It's John's on.
Okay, but I thought maybe Ted might be coming on too.
Well, if he does, we'll.
I heard a ring.
You heard a ring, huh? Okay, all right. Anyway, welcome, Sean. And so I'm again my favorite theme of late, which is well, what the hell are we going to do? And I'm the only thing that really comes to mind actually is that the leadership of the country, and in some cases the state, is so bad, and they're not capable of dealing with this. Okay, it's a systematic failure as well as a leadership failure, and they're lost. Okay, not only are they Nazis and fascists, but they're also lost. Okay, and yet. So the only thing I can think of to do really is, well, I guess we've got demonstrations in 90 cities that have generated tear gas responses.
Mhm.
I saw that an interesting stat yesterday. And that really, that's probably the best direction to go to guarantee that this thing has to come to an end. This situation that we're in right now. I mean, it has to come to a turn in the road where we can reevaluate and other voices can get heard. So I'm kind of thinking that because I remember, you know, back to the Nixon days that you know, that the protests from the civil rights movement to the anti-war movement all the way through, they never really subsided until that guy resigned.
Yep.
You know, I mean, then they started to subside, although
Well,
Reagan was getting ready to, you know,
yeah, but I think there's
kill
a
us
huge
again. But
difference.
yeah, you get my point. So I'm really waiting. So if we have a giant upheaval and three-quarters of the whole edifice starts to pancake, you know, like the World Trade Center, well, then we can have we're in a position for the country to have a fairly profound discussion about what the hell do we do. But so that's my motivation, and I'm anxious to hear your. I hear your rumors that you
What a
guys.
depressing way to start the day.
Well, that's right. I started out optimistically at the beginning of the program by noting that I believe the generals, you know, stepping away from Trump could mean an even stronger message, since that's crossing a kind of a red line and
Yeah.
military protocols. Maybe what they're really saying is get rid of this guy now, otherwise you might not have an election.
Well, you know what? I actually am guardedly optimistic, and for a couple of reasons. The first is that, you know, if you think going back to even before the coronavirus situations set in, we kind of know what we should have done. That Donald Trump was utterly and congenitally incapable of doing it, you know, is evident to everybody in the world at this point. But we kind of know what we should have done around the virus. We even know, and there are signs that we've learned something from the Great Recession, that more of the economic support should have gone directly to people and not to banks and companies, because the need was to stimulate demand and do a few other things. And there's a pretty great likelihood that Trump's going to get removed from office in the election. And you know, whether or not he'll go willingly is of course an open question. But I think, you know, when Trump goes, I'll be optimistic about it. When he goes, I think there is going to be in the nation, apart from a few wackos who are probably going to try to take, you know, adopt a Second Amendment solution, as they say.
Yeah.
But apart from the wacko wing, I think there's going to be a collective sigh of relief, and there's also going to be a willingness to step back a little bit and say, okay, we know we've got a lot to recover from. Let's come together and figure out how to do this. And so even though that won't solve problems like systemic racism, it won't solve a lot of the built-in inequities in the economic system, I think everybody is going to be willing to give a Biden administration or something at least time to get this nation back on its feet, so that we're debating these issues and working towards solutions from a position of relative, you know, comfort and security, rather than the
Yes.
situation we're in right now. And the other thing I'd mention, going back to what you said, I think one of the differences between, you know, the Nixon years and what we're dealing with now is that, as bad as Richard Nixon was, and the man was a war criminal and should have been prosecuted. I mean, there are lots of problems with Richard Nixon,
Right.
but unlike Donald Trump, he at least felt like he had to outwardly profess respect for American institutions.
Mhm.
And in fact, he had to hide what he was doing,
Yeah.
whereas Trump feels no such compunction. And to that degree, yeah, the system survived. Corrupt though it was, and flawed though it was, in the Nixon years, the system survived. And only now is that system really coming into question. And so I think the system can be restored and change in an orderly way, rather than through a bloodletting, which is what we're facing right now.
Yeah.
And I think there is going to be a collective sigh of relief when Trump goes, and I think he will go.
I think he will go. I'm not sure about what he represents.
Oh, well, no.
You've got a lot of dysfunction here, that's pretty serious.
Well, but don't you think that there's going to be just a parade of court cases in the public regarding Trump's finances and how much money he stole from the government through contracting? And I mean, it's got to be an incredible, like an octopus type of situation to diffuse. And that could take a lot of the publicity away from anything we're trying to do positively, because people want blood. They want
Well,
Trump
but it's
in
a hard
jail.
choice. Vengeance is a hard trail. I mean,
Yeah.
you can end up wasting all your resources doing it. On the other hand, you got to decide how serious the opposition is. I mean, I keep going back to Abraham Lincoln when he discovered that the Confederate forces in the Maryland militia were conspiring to help the Confederate armies encircle Washington, at which point he arrested them all and put them in a stockade for whatever the rest of the war. And when challenged about whether it was constitutional, he said probably not. Suspension of habeas corpus, no trial, no, nothing. He says, but if they had been successful in their plot, there wouldn't have been any habeas corpus either. Yeah, and I'm not sure we're not up against a situation like that. See, so I have left-wing authoritarian tendencies with respect to when these matters get past the point when you can't litigate till the end of time about some things.
Well, I think you're actually putting your finger on something important, because let's happily assume that Trump goes, that Biden gets into the White House. The Democratic Party and people generally are going to face a real challenge, and that is Trump has done so many awful things so badly. There's going to be a desire to reverse everything right away. And assuming, let's even more happily assume that the Democrats retake the Senate and hold the House as well, and can basically have the capacity to do whatever they want. And one of the struggles that we've had, one of the ways in which Trump has been so incredibly destructive, is that he has undermined the norms and behaviors, the kind of forbearance and tolerance that has characterized politics in the United States and governing. And it's not necessarily breaking rules, but it's breaking norms that have allowed us to function civilly. And it's important that a lot of that get restored. And if Democrats successfully take the presidency, the House, and the Senate, one of the challenges we're going to face is how do we balance our desire to reverse basically everything that Donald Trump has done against the need, and I think it is a need, to also reestablish at least some standards and norms of behavior and tolerance and forbearance that are so badly lacking if we're going to have politics that's less polarized going forward. I mean, I think it will mean that the Democrats will, in some cases, have to say, yes, we'd like to do this and we could do this, but out of regard for the wishes of people on the other side, we're not going to do this in some cases. And how, Democrats balance the desire on the one hand to basically reverse everything and get back on the right track, and on the other hand, the need to reestablish norms and standards of behavior, that will be a constant fence walking exercise that I think is going to be challenging.
What's the point of the Republican Party right now?
Well, I mean, it has none. The Republican Party has completely abandoned any pretense of putting the interests of governing and the nation over the raw aggregation and accumulation of power and assertion of that power. They have basically rejected the institutions, the principles on which this country has founded. So in that respect, No, I don't think there is a reason for this Republican Party. I mean, I think there is such a thing as principled conservatism, but this Republican Party isn't it.
But you know, a lot of the undermining took place because you know, individual wealthy billionaires, as opposed like the Koch brothers, for example, and some other examples, right? The what's the fellow from Las
Well,
Vegas, Sheldon,
Mercer's,
somebody.
oh,
Yeah.
Sheldon Adelson.
Yeah, the people like, you know, that decided to independently form these things that where they could put money and buy candidates directly rather than going through the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Fundraising and kind of collective organization, whatever. And then you saw this, and especially in that and raising tons and tons of money through other independent things like the right-wing religions and stuff like that, right? I mean, same thing. And so they put together a you know, an unholy kind of coalition, right, of funding sources that have you know, they don't really have any interest in democracy per se, okay? I mean, democratic, meaning the institutions that you're talking about, right? And the protocols that one must respect in having a democratic society. And I'm not sure that we can get out of it without doing something about that structural problem of that strata, okay, as well as the giant corporations who are too big to fail. It seems to me that you have to get a public stake in those corporations, and you have to tax the wealth of some of these individuals at a level which they consider existential. Believe me, they do. Okay, Trump is proof that they do.
No, I agree with a great deal of what you just said, and in fact, I can go back to the state of my state when I was writing that column and blog a number of years ago. You know, frankly, even I think as far as I can recall, before Elizabeth Warren came out, and I think she was probably the first candidate to suggest a wealth tax. I had actually run the calculation of how much of a wealth tax would be required to replace all the revenue that we get from the income tax. And if you were to do
that's an
purely
interesting calculation.
Yeah, and it would take a wealth tax of between 2 3/4 and 3.5%.
That's so minute.
Wow.
If you were to do that, you could replace at the federal government level all the income that you get from
the individual income tax.
And that's just the opposite of what the Republicans say.
Yeah, it would actually be, and you know how Republicans, going back to Malcolm Forbes, Steve Forbes actually, not Malcolm was his father, but Steve Forbes argued for a flat tax.
I remember that, yeah.
I would actually support a flat wealth tax. I would.
That's an interesting idea too. Well, that's are you a fan or a student of Thomas Piketty at all?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And if you go to the State of My State blog, you will find a blog post that's on the first page called Thomas Piketty in West Virginia.
All right.
You know, I saw an interesting interview with Krugman, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. I can't remember who was interviewing him. It was unusual. Oh, he was talking about Piketty and how, you know, that he still had some questions about the model. He said, okay, he says, nobody has transformed the economic profession's conversation more than Piketty in the past decades. And if anybody deserves a Nobel Prize, he does. It's an interesting remark, you know, because I know that Krugman doesn't entirely agree. I mean, Krugman is a pure Keynesian, almost as pure as you can get, okay? Yeah. And Piketty is somewhere in between a Keynesian and a Marxist. I don't know where he occupies his own little territory there someplace. But I think that his arguments about the ultimate, there is only one solution ultimately in the larger scale of things, and that is to tax wealth. But
well, Piketty is really an interesting case for us in West Virginia, because his approach to analyzing economics actually is a very powerful tool in understanding why West Virginia has performed so poorly economically more or less forever. And that is, you know, kind of the underlying dynamic that Piketty focuses on is the distribution of income between the portion that goes to labor and the portion that goes to capital.
Right.
And the problem in West Virginia, when you apply a Piketty-like analysis to that, is that because West Virginia's economy is so dominated by out-of-state interests. I mean, 3/4 of all the real estate in West Virginia is owned by out-of-state interests. The coal industry, more than 90% of the coal industry is out-of-state interests, and that's
about
true of
gas?
the natural gas industry as well. And so what happens is, although West Virginia can occasionally put out, especially with the advent of the fracking boom, really immense GDP numbers, good growth numbers on GDP, it never is reflected in local prosperity or growth. And part of the reason for that, using a Piketty-like analysis, is that very little of that portion of income that goes to capital rather than to labor ever lands in West Virginia.
Exactly.
Most of that money is exported to out-of-state interests.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, and you know, on a national level or on an international level, and Piketty points this out in his book, he said, you know, basically exchanges of capital tend to balance each other out between nations. But it's only in cases like West Virginia's or other resource-rich places where occasionally that exchange of capital income is not equal. And that is actually, when you think about it, more or less the definition of the resource curse.
Yep. And you can go either to Libya or to Norway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kind of. Or you can end up as Russia, too. I think Russia's got the curse, too, actually. Yeah, that's a profound question. Let me ask you another one, though, because I was reading a lengthy analysis of different economic trends in the West by a Chinese academic the other day. And, of course, they write in a kind of coded language, which I happen to understand. But nonetheless, he had a few interesting points. One is that he was very enthusiastic about Piketty, for example. And this guy's the chair of some Marxist institute in China. He says, you can't do this unless socialists are running the government. You can't make the wealth tax work, you know, as long as the capitalists are running the government. He says, unless you can change the so-called class composition of the government to a different kind of coalition, you can't get it done. They got too many weapons to kill you with. What do you say about that?
I mean, I think generally that is perhaps true. That said, I think I think it's less of a political issue than it is an issue of personal choice. One of the great challenges with a wealth tax is that, given the wealth of people who are really, really wealthy, and given the rarity of wealth taxes around the country, it's very easy for them to pick up and leave. And they would, because when you think, I mean, even when I talk about, you know, like a 3% wealth tax being capable of replacing the income tax, you know, if you apply that to Bill Gates, who's worth, I've heard, a number from a couple of years ago was about $80 billion.
Yeah, I think it's,
Okay.
Right. Here's my former boss you're talking about there.
Yeah, okay. Well, but you're talking about,
I never met him.
a 3% tax on $80 billion, he would be paying $2.4 billion a year in taxes, which is astronomically higher than he would be paying pretty much in any other country. And so one of the one of the problems associated with actually implementing a wealth tax as a primary revenue driver rather than as a supplemental is that it would cause flight. Now, and I think that's one of the reasons, by the way, when Elizabeth Warren proposed a wealth tax, it wasn't as a replacement of the income tax, but it was a supplemental to balance things out. And I think what she was trying to do was basically straddle the difference between a tax that would make the system fairer on the one hand, but not so fair that it would actually cause people to take off and bail out.
Yeah,
Of
of course, that's like a labor agreement, right? You're sitting down the company. Well, now if we agree to the union's demands, we're just going to have to ship out the, you know, the widget department over there to Australia, or what, or some other place.
And they did.
And they did, of
They
course.
did, yeah.
And you never knew whether, you know, what are they just? They're really just are going to try to. They're going to do it anyway and hang their hat on you, right, in the process, so that they can, you know, the local press doesn't. Well, it was the greedy union that drove them out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's a similar kind of negotiation, actually. So I'm familiar with that. I want to ask another question, though. Really, there has to be a global solution, and or at least progress toward a global solution, right? I mean, and in some ways, none of this is any longer entirely possible to fix inside a single country.
We might be able to leave out Uruguay. I'm not sure that anybody would be, if that were the only shelter, I'm not sure that everyone would go there.
Right?
Well, I don't know. Venezuela, if we leave it alone, they might.
Yeah, they got a lot.
That's another resource cursed historical situation that, you know, well, you can read the whole history of Venezuela, and no matter what else was different from year to year, oil stayed the same. Okay, so keep in mind the Venezuelan story.
But John, can I ask Sean about this reimagining Appalachia, which was our original intent?
I thought they didn't. Ted wasn't sure he wanted to talk about that.
Well, you don't want to talk about the think tank, but I think we can talk about the concept.
We can. Well, first, I have to acknowledge that I'm actually not part of reimagining Appalachia. Okay. They overlooked me. They inexplicably overlooked me when they decided to undertake that particular thing.
Right.
But what did happen is, and there is a process in which, yes, there is an effort to put together a process to completely rethink policy, particularly having to do with economic development in Appalachia generally, and especially in our part of Appalachia. And I know Ted Bettner and a number of other people are a major part of that. I'm involved in another effort, and this is a strange one, in which we kind of came together by accident. You know, as you guys know, I've long had a bee in my bonnet over the fracking industry and the petrochemical industries and the completely unfulfilled promises of economic revival and prosperity associated with those. And so a few months ago, I just got sufficiently upset that I decided, because so often, especially in the issue about petrochemical advancement in West Virginia, you know, we've heard the governor talking about building crackers, the Appalachian storage hub. Joe Manchin and Capito are running around Washington trying to get federal funding to help underwrite this Appalachian storage hub because they say it's going to bring 100,000 jobs to the state, which is, of course, absurd. And, you know, I've written way too many columns and articles that basically no one pays any attention to. So I decided a few months ago to do something that would command attention, or at least that I hoped would. And I felt pretty confident about my analysis economically of the unlikelihood that the petrochemical build-out, A, would ever happen, and B, if it did, that it would spur the kind of job growth that they were talking about. So I put together a brief, and I started approaching economists from, you know, the leading universities in the region. You know, in Pittsburgh, CMU, Pitt, and a couple of others. I went to Ohio State, to Akron, to Youngstown State in Ohio.
You did all this traveling virtually, or?
Virtually,
yeah,
entirely,
okay.
because this was all during the coronavirus crisis.
Right.
And I rounded up, to be honest with you, 15 economics and engineering professors who, none of whom disagreed with the analysis, and 8 of whom were willing to sign on to a public letter to the governors of Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania that said, in essence, that this whole notion of a petrochemical boom is an economic non-starter. And
that was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Yeah. and that we need economic development strategies that are based on industries and opportunities that are actually growing. And we just released the letter this past Monday on the 15th, and the uptake has been absolutely astonishing.
Really?
I think, well, did you get, I sent you an email showing the media hit list, but yeah, in all 3 states, we have gotten statewide coverage from multiple outlets. We have elicited responses so far from the governor of Pennsylvania. We've gotten a response from a few state officials, including the head of the jobs program in Ohio. And in West Virginia, I'm afraid Jim Justice hasn't responded yet, but
that's okay.
we have gotten responses from the oil and gas associations in Ohio and West Virginia.
Yeah, what did they say?
I will send you, I don't know that you can play it. I will forward you an MP4, a video clip, because in West Virginia, you know, we were on Hoppy Kercheval's show. Ted Bettner did a 15-minute interview on that show a couple days ago about the letter. And Ted was one of the signers, by the way.
Right.
But on Channel 7 in Wheeling, they've done 2 stories on the letter so far. The first story on the letter, and then they did a follow-up story the next day that featured the president, or I think actually the PR guy for the Ohio Oil and Gas Association.
Sure.
And he apparently was confused about the provenance of the letter.
Hadn't quite read it yet.
He goes on, and I'll send you the MP4. You can see this.
Oh, God.
He talks about how the letter was the result of a survey. I have no idea what he was talking about. From an organization that's funded by out-of-state liberal foundations. And I think, and I don't know, honestly, you can see it, but I think he thought it was from IEFA, you know, the International Energy Economic Analysis or Financial Analysis.
I see.
Right? And because in the letter, I did cite an IEFA study. I think he imagines that it came from IEFA. So on camera, he is taking the reporter through a screen grab of what I believe are IEFA's foundation donors.
Yeah.
Showing them how so he's talking about all this foundation money and all of this other stuff. And I called the reporter at Channel 7 and I said, her name's Stephanie Grindley. I called Stephanie. I said, Stephanie, I just want you to know, I organized this. It was just me. And she said, well, where did the money come from? And I said, what money?
It's a letter.
I had an idea. I emailed and called a few people, and they said yes, and I sent the letter.
You mean it's not a conspiracy?
There's no money. And she said, well, what about the survey? And I said,
no survey.
What survey? There wasn't one.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, I think it's telling. The bottom line is, though, it's getting a lot of uptake in the media. What it's done is take an argument that has been characterized up until now as one of jobs, meaning petrochemical jobs, versus the environment. It's going to do nasty stuff to our air and water. And that's true, except that there are no jobs. And more than that, and so what I wanted to do was find a way to inject into public discourse and debate the economic and technology problems with this whole petrochemical dream. And I think to that degree, in a way that I never was able to do with my column in the Martinsburg Journal or with the state of my state, in one fell swoop, we actually seem to have done it. Reporters are now asking the other side about, hey, what about this problem? And guess what? They got no answers.
Right.
And so my hope is, and this is part of what we're going to be doing going forward, and I'm going to be working on this with Ted Bettner and other people, that we can build on this success, because we do have a process in place with Reimagining Appalachia and some shoot-off initiatives that we're going to be undertaking. that I think we can sustain this, because there is more of a story to be told here.
What does the I'm sorry. Go ahead, JB. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna be on that call on Monday, and I want to follow this all the way to the end. I really am surprised that it took so long. I mean, I wish we'd have done this 5 years ago, but now that we've done it, I think it's with this age that we're in of total social and political upheaval, that this is a perfect time for it. Maybe this is really the time when we're trying to get honest. We're trying to be honest about how we conduct business and how the world goes round, and how we treat minorities, and how we treat people that are homeless, and and how we treat police officers that are killing people, shooting them in the back.
Yeah.
All these things are coming to a head, and this might be the perfect time to do what we've decided to do. And I want to support it with everything I've got.
Well, you know what, JB? I mean, to something you just said, you know what was, as exciting as this is for me to have finally in some level broken through, I'll tell you what's kind of depressing about it. When I went looking, there was some selection bias in terms of the economists that I went to ask them to participate in this letter. And I promise you, there are, for everyone who participated in the letter, I've got another one who would have, but for professional reasons, which I think we can understand, up for tenure, other issues like that, felt that they couldn't, but were nonetheless sympathetic, believed in this. I did not find a single economist who would push back and argue the other side of the issue.
Well, let me understand the basic economic argument, and that is that these investments are not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Well,
in other words, that the long-term risk prospects of both oil and especially U.S. gas are going to be diminishing, not increasing, and therefore it's a bad. You won't really attract the private capital or spinoffs that other forecasts say. Is that your basic argument there?
That is in essence it, and that's because particularly in the petrochemical portion of the industry, the playing field has changed radically over the last 3 years, and we're in a case where we're to be real clear, what they're talking about happening in the tri-state area, meaning Ohio, the northern panhandle of West Virginia and Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania, is that we're going to see an explosion of 4 to 5, they're called cracker plants, which take ethane from natural gas and convert it into ethylene and polyethylene, which is what is used in plastics manufacturing.
Right.
Those 4 to 5 crackers are really huge petrochemical plants.
Yeah, I got a tour through one up near below State College, about 20 miles. Yep.
Okay, and so so that whole the Appalachian storage hub that Capito and Manchin go on about, and other things, that whole notion of that thing being built is on the backbone of there have to be these cracker plants because they would be the customers for the storage hub.
Right.
And the problem is that in the last 2 years in particular, there has been a huge build out in the Gulf Coast of the United States of cracker capacity. They've been building like mad out there. In the last 18 months alone, we've increased capacity in the United States to produce ethylene and polyethylene by more than 50% in less than 2 years. And in China, they've got a build out that's going even farther than that. And at the same time, because the price of oil has come down, and oil has derivatives that are competitive with natural gas to supply the plastics industry, because the price of oil that has come down, there's more competition from that side as well for the plastics market. And so those two forces combined have so badly undercut the profit margins of cracker plants that these investments no longer make any sense.
No, they
Right.
don't. They don't.
And-
I think we got to bring this to a close because I'm going to have to break it into 2 shows, I think, today. So
Thank you very much, Sean.
well, that's a fascinating discussion. I think we need to go further with it. I think I worry a little bit about what we're going to replace the investment with. Maybe that's a whole other show.
And that's what That's what Ted and I and the others are going to be working on, and we will have an announcement in a couple of weeks. And
all right, well then we'll have something to
One of them's gotta be
go ahead,
hemp.
JB. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One of them's got to be hemp. We're growing a lot of hemp.
Right. Well, speaking, I'll support that as a consumer. You know, so.
No, I'm serious. We're actually doing it. I was in the hemp fields yesterday. It's happening.
It pays shit
It's
wages.
happening on a big scale.
I'm for it, but it pays shit wages.
No, I disagree. I disagree.
I know don't argue with me. I know the wages. I know I've researched this, JB. Yeah, you'll lose the argument, you know.
Well, thanks a lot, Sean.
Okay.
well, thank you for allowing me to come on.
All right,
Really
buddy.
enjoyed it.
Take care, everybody. Have a great one, man.
See you all
Thanks.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.